Well, you liked part 1, so let's look at part 2 of Top 10 Evil Women in History We Wish Weren't Born. Hi, my name is Jessa, and let's get into it. Number 10, Myra Hindley. The influence people have in wanting to be accepted by their surroundings is pretty high, especially if they are lonely or more subservient to doing whatever someone asks them to do. In the case of Myra, she's like a few on this list is part of that group. Myra Hindley was a notorious English criminal who, along with her partner Ian Brady, was involved in the Moors death in 1960s. Both of their victims were young people and teenagers, and the crimes became known as the Moors deaths because some of the victims' bodies were buried on the Saddleworth Moor near Manchester. The ages of the victims ranged from 10 to 17 years old, and Myra Hindley and Ian Brady were arrested on October 1965. At their trial in 1966, they were convicted of multiple killings. Both were sentenced to life imprisonment. Hindley was also convicted of harboring Brady's knowledge of John Kilbride's deaths, and Myra Hindley spent over 36 years in prison. During her incarceration, she underwent various legal proceedings and appeals, and she consistently maintained that she was a reformed person and sought parole on multiple occasions. In the end, Myra died in prison on November 15, 2002 at the age of 60. Number 9, Carla Homolka. In the 1990s, a Canadian woman who gained notoriety for her involvement in a series of horrific crimes committed alongside her former husband. Homolka's first victim was her own younger sister, Tammy. Just 2 days before Christmas, Tammy Homolka was drugged and harmed by her older sister Anne Bernardo and died after choking on her own vomit. The couple then proceeded to kidnap both Leslie Mahaffey and Christian French before both were horrifically mistreated before they were killed and after Homolka was arrested. She conned the investigators and tricked them into believing that Bernardo was primarily responsible, and she testified against him and was given a very lenient sentence in return, though the videotapes later revealed the extent of the atrocities in which she also participated in. Homolka was released from prison in 2005, and Homolka today lives in a completely different life. She settled comfortably in Quebec, where she is part of a quiet community and even volunteers at a local elementary school. Number 8, Rosemary West. Part of the serial killing couple from the Gloucestershire area of England, Rose and Fred West killed at least 9 young women together throughout the 70s and 80s. After tormenting these people, the West would then kill their victims and bury their remains in the yard and their basement. As a result, their house would later become known as the House of Horrors. Rose West also acted independently and killed her own stepdaughter through Fred. In June of 1971, West was then convicted of 10 homicides in 1995, as well as in 2022, remains in prison. Fred West then also took his own life shortly after being arrested. Number 7, Amelia Dyer. Proving one of the Victorian era's most infamous criminals, Amelia Dyer could be one of the most prolific serial killers in human history. Back in Victorian England, people were paid for adopting babies in a practice known as baby farming. Amelia Dyer would then turn this into her profession and adopted numerous young people. She began by keeping them for a time until they passed of natural causes, but ultimately turned to disposing them shortly after adopting them, thereby keeping the money without having to actually raise them. One of Dyer's victims was found floating in the River Thames on March 30th, 1896, leading to her arrest and eventually execution. While the 6 victims may have been confirmed, it's believed that Dyer may have actually killed up to 400 throughout her life. In one of the most sensational trials of the Victorian period, she was found guilty and later hung. Number 6, Isabella the First. Although they were noted as the Queen Regent of Castile and United Spain, the atrocities they had inflicted onto the world has been noted as an expansion at the hands of so many deaths. Isabella and Ferdinand issued the Alhambra Decree in 1492, which resulted in the expulsions of Jews from Spain. This policy, driven by the religious and political motives, has been criticized for its impact on a significant population. She also supported the establishment of the Spanish Inquisition in 1478, while initially intending to ensure the orthodoxy of converts from Judaism and Islam. It later expanded its scope. The Inquisition was responsible for the persecution, torment, and execution of individuals accused of heresy. As well as her support for Columbus, as we know, led the discovery and eradication of the indigenous of America. Her desire and need of expansion led to the world where it is today, left a blood trail of civilizations that were already established before they even got their colonial hands on. Number 5, Dagmar Overby. Dagmar Overby was a Danish serial killer who killed, including one of her own, during a 7-year period between 1913 to 1920. Overby was working as a professional caretaker, caring for babies born outside of marriage. Out of all the minors she killed, some were strangled, some were drowned, and the rest buried to death in her Mansory heater. The exact number of Overby's victims remain unclear, but it is believed that she may have been responsible for the deaths of at least 25. In March 1921, Overby was sentenced to death in one of the most watched death trials in Danish history. The sentence was later commuted to life in jail, and Overby died in prison in 1929, age 42. Number 4, Daria Saltikova. Daria Nikolaevna Saltikova, also known as the Saltikchika, was a Russian noblewoman who gained infamy for her cruel treatment and deaths of serfs during the 18th century. She became a widow at the age of 25, and after her husband's death in 1755, Saltykova inherited significant wealth and several estates. Saltykova was known for her extreme cruelty and sadistic treatment of her serfs who worked for her on her estates. She then subjected them to physical and psychological harm, including torment and death. Rumors about Saltykova's harmful behavior circulated and complaints were made to authorities. In 1768, Daria Saltykova was arrested and brought to trial. The investigation revealed horrifying details of her crime, including instances of beating, mutilations, and killing of serfs. In 1768, she was sentenced to life imprisonment and perpetual penitence in a convent. Daria Saltykova died in 1801 while still in confinement, and her life and crimes became the subject of legends and stories, illustrating the extreme harm that some members of the Russian nobility inflicted on their serfs. In total, she ended up killing up to 140 people. Number 3, Leonora Leonardo. My bad if I messed that up. Also known as the soap maker of Correggio, Leonardo was an Italian serial killer who gained infamy for her gruesome crimes in the 1930s. Leonardo's crime was motivated by a twisted belief in human sacrifice as a means of protecting her children and ensuring their well-being. She believed that her killings would result in turning her victims into soap and tea cakes, and Leonardo's first known killings occurred in 1939 when she killed Faustina Seti, a middle-aged woman whom she had promised to find a husband. She subsequently killed 2 other women, Francesca Salvi and Virginia Cacioppo, using similar methods, and in 1946, Leonardo went to trial for her crimes. She was then found guilty and sentenced to 30 years in prison and 3 years in a criminal asylum. Leonardo spent her sentence in various prisons and psychiatric institutions where then she died on October 15, 1970. Number 2, Yuana Baraza. Born in 1957 to an alcoholic mother, Yuana Baraza is a former Mexican professional wrestler and one of the most prolific serial killers in Mexican history. Between 1998 and 2006, Baraza, a remarkable, hefty, and muscular woman, killed between 42 and 48 elderly women. This earned her the nickname the Old Lady Killer, and it was long thought that the killer was a male, and it wasn't until January 2006 when Baraza was arrested fleeing from the home of one of her latest victims. She was found guilty on 16 charges of these crimes and sentenced to 759 years in prison. Considering all of her victims were older women, there is a chance it was due to childhood trauma from her alcoholic mother. She felt the need to take justice into her own hands and kill as many quote-unquote versions of her mother she could find. But of course, this is all speculation, and even if that was the case, whatever her experience was with her mother was a clear indication of her subconscious motive. And finally, number 1, Andita Marti. This Spanish woman is often referred to as a vampire owing to the nature of her crimes. It is generally believed that Marti kidnapped young people off the streets of Barcelona and put them to work in her brothel. It is also believed that Marti killed minors and used their blood and remains in various elixirs, and then she sold these elixirs to the rich, claiming that they would treat dangerous ailments like tuberculosis. 12 victims have been linked to Marti, although it's suspected that she killed many more. However, some historians defend Marti and argue that her crimes weren't as bad or as many as the traditional story suggests. Either way, people had died. All of these women had something in common, and it was their desire and thirst for death, revenge, or just plain sadistic. Either way, I wouldn't be too sure if I'd want to be alone in a room with anyone who thinks life is something you can just take away. Anyways, that's all for today. Thank you for joining me. My name is Jessa. Be sure to like and subscribe, and instead of committing crimes, write an autobiography as a form of therapy. All the best. Bye.